Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a quick spin through the latest headlines in the sport. Our man Simon Head is enjoying some much-needed family time this week, so I'm back in the driver's seat, and we've got an esteemed panel today with Simon Samano, Danny Segura, and gorgeous Jorge Garcia. So let's not waste any time and get started. Guys, recently John Kavanagh spoke with the Mac Life, and he talked about the possibility of Michael Chandler or Justin Gaethje potentially stepping in for Dustin Poirier at 257. Now, I know we all hope that doesn't happen. That's the rematch that we want to see. But Kavanagh said respectfully that both those guys are slightly easier opponents for Conor McGregor. What's your take out of those guys? And I'll even give you Dan Hooker if you want, because there's some rumblings that maybe he might step in there as well. What's the toughest matchup for Conor McGregor? Let's put 3 minutes on the clock. Let's go to the boss man. Simon Samano, start us off.
All right, guys. I actually agree with Coach Kavanagh on this one. I think Dustin Poirier is the toughest matchup of those three guys. Now, the one thing that I think that I will say definitively about this matchup between Conor and Dustin, I think Dustin has improved more than Conor since they last fought. And I base that very simply on experience. In the last couple of years, Poirier has 8 UFC fights to his credit. Conor, he's only fought 2 times in the UFC since 2017. So anybody who thinks this fight's going to go the same way, I just don't see it. I think Poirier has improved immensely since they last fought, and I don't expect this fight to be the same way. If I'm going to go with the guy that I think is maybe the next on the list, I'll go with Michael Chandler, just because I think his cardio, his gas tank, if he had to step in, he'd be able to hang with Conor and really put some pressure on him. And also, if he needed to lean on his wrestling, he could do that. So that's where I stand.
Interesting. Yeah, I definitely think Dustin Poirier has gotten better from the first time around. Well, but they both have, right? So, George, what say you? Is Poirier the toughest matchup, or one of those other names stand out for you as potentially more difficult?
I'm going to go on the similar route as Simon. Poirier has those 2 wins over Gaethje and Poirier right away. You know, I know this is an MMA math, but still, he's proven it. When he gets in there, he's probably the most consistent out of all of them. Now, what we're left with, though, is Chandler, Hooker, and Gaethje. And how has Conor McGregor lost? Submissions, all of them. But the last 2, I feel like, were technique, and also he reached the point where he was exhausted. In one of those against Diaz, he went for the takedown, and then versus Khabib, he got taken down and finished right away. Who has the wrestling? Gaethje and Chandler. Who has the one-punch power that you always look for in a fight? Look, they all do. Everybody forgets Hooker had some nice ones along the way, you know, like James Vick, for example. But the submissions, I think that's where Chandler distances himself from Gaethje. I'm going to go with Michael Chandler hitting all 3 wrestling, power, and submission attempts.
Yeah, man, we're splitting hairs talking about a bunch of absolute studs up there, right? So, Danny, what say you? It's about kind of styles make fights, right? One of these guys stand out more to you as a challenge?
I think as of now, Dustin Poirier is probably the biggest challenge for Conor McGregor, obviously not keeping in mind Khabib, who's retired. But after that, I think it might be Justin Gaethje. I mean, he does have a very similar style to Dustin Poirier, right? Moves forward, has a very high output, plenty of power. I guess the only difference there is that perhaps Dustin Poirier is a little bit more defensively sound, and obviously fighting a guy with the power of Conor McGregor, you know, that's always very dangerous. So I would still stick Dustin Poirier as the biggest challenge for Conor McGregor, but right after that, I think Justin Gaethje is a big threat for Conor, just, again, given the power, given his output, and you know that Conor has worn out in the later rounds. So I'll go with Gaethje out of those 3.
Yeah, all of them great fights. Be interesting to see how many we get to see down the line. I'll tell you what, a guy whose name wasn't there, Charles Oliveira, would be a tough matchup for Conor McGregor as well. I don't know if that would excite him. All right, guys, Colby Covington, he's getting vocal again. He's claiming he's ready to sign a contract with Jorge Masvidal and is simply waiting on the man he calls Street Judas to get on board. Now, listen, we know Masvidal is one of the biggest stars in the game. You know, he's looking for big fights, and he'll fight anybody. He's really done it his whole career. So what's going on here? Why is this fight not coming together? Is there a bigger fight to make from Masvidal right now? Is there something else out there that maybe he's thinking about that we're not thinking about? Or is this the biggest fight you can make right now for him? Let's put 3 minutes on the clock again, and let's start with George. Have it.
Yeah, guys, I think it's a layup. I mean, look, they're both contenders for the title. They both lost to Usman, but they both showed different things. One, Colby Covington actually got those early rounds and was leading the way. He was going to grab that title from Kamaru Usman. So, you know, he showed that he needs to get back there, and he's already gotten 1 win. 1 more would solidify it. with Jorge Masvidal. Yeah, he said he was training, but he still took the fight on 1 week notice. He wants to get back in there. You could see it on the Declassified and all the other different UFC content that they produce. He told Dana White, I want to get back in there with, I know I can beat this guy. So obviously with Burns and Usman, they have yet to even fight. These two need to do something. They're both contenders. They got heat. I mean, it is a layup. It doesn't get any easier than that. And let me tell you something. You can't lollygag too much because you got Chimaev versus Edwards, and then Wonder Boy just got to win. And I'm telling you, don't look out for those rematches, those instant classics. Sometimes they warrant the rematches, so you don't want to get burned out by that.
Yeah, guys, it does seem like an easy sell, right? I mean, top contenders plus a grudge match. Danny, we know Masvidal's thinking outside the box, too. He's a businessman, so are we missing something? What's the fight that makes the most sense for you?
I mean, it all depends, right? Going for just big money fights and try to put the biggest fight as possible. Look, BMF title did wonders. You can run it back with Nate Diaz, or you can have Conor McGregor fight for that BMF belt, and we know he's interested in any type of gold. So that'd be very interested as far as a pay-per-view and just size-wise, those would be very big fights. But as far as what makes sense in the division, Conor McGregor is really a lightweight. He's gone up to a fight at 170 pounds, but mainly to fight other lightweights. And then, the Nate Diaz fight with Jorge Masvidal was pretty one-sided from what I remember. So I think, look, the Covington fight makes a lot of sense. They both hate each other, right? They got a great sort of history going on, right? They used to be very good friends. Now they're foes. They're in the same division. They're top ranked, former title challengers as well. I think that fight is the fight that needs to go down next. I'm all in for Masvidal versus Colby Covington.
Man, I'm hearing a lot of big names right there. They all sound good for MMA Junkie web traffic. What would you like to see, Simon Samano? What should we put together?
Hey, look, what we're talking about here and what you said there, John, to open up the segment was what could Masvidal be thinking about? Masvidal could be thinking about January 23rd, UFC 257, and seeing what happens with Conor McGregor. That's what he could be thinking about. Last year, 2019, we were all thinking maybe Masvidal, McGregor, maybe it could happen. Dana White wasn't in on it. Maybe he was in on it, and it all fell apart. We never got back to that. But Masvidal's been waiting for something, and if he's waiting for something, he's waiting for something big. And that's the thing that I think he could be waiting for that's big. McGregor, if he wins at UFC 257 against Poirier, we're talking about him fighting Manny Pacquiao in boxing perhaps, et cetera, et cetera. No, we don't want him to do that. We want him to stick with MMA, and the one guy that I think can keep him in MMA is the BMF, Jorge Masvidal.
Interesting stuff, man. I think you're right. The more I think about it, I think he's playing this thing out a little bit and just buy himself some time and see what's all on the table. So, speaking of things on the table, Vitor Belfort, he's the latest one to come out in MMA and say he'd be interested in a potential fight with Jake Paul. Now, UFC Hall of Famer Michael Bisping has said he's in. Ben Askren is calling for it. Dylan Dennis. The list goes on and on and on, right? And to me, I'll be honest, it seems a bit silly. Professional prize fighters taking on YouTube sensations. But at the end of the day, we're talking about some real money as well, and that's what they're in this to do, right? So what do you guys think? I mean, is there anything wrong with fighters trying to cash in at their maximum value, or should there be some kind of code of ethics or something that prevents pro fighters from taking part in really what is essentially a circus sideshow? Let's put 3 minutes on the clock, and Danny, let's let you start it off.
Code of ethics and fighting almost don't always go together. So look, it's prize fighting at the end of the day. These fighters are out here to make money for themselves and for their family. This is how they provide. So look, I can't hate, and I will never hate on somebody trying to fight, even if it does sound ridiculous. But just because I think it's ridiculous, that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen. Look, if they want to fight and they can make it happen and there's people willing to pay money for it, hey, why not? But if you look at my Twitter timeline, I'm not saying anything about it because I'm just not interested. So I can simply just not buy it if I don't want to. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's kind of silly. Obviously, the Vitor Belfort one, we know that even right towards the end of his UFC career, he was still packing some speed and some power behind his hands, although his chin might have not been there. So I think that would actually go quite south for Jake Paul here. So I wouldn't like that. But Dylan Dennis, who's a grappler, Ben Askren, who's a grappler, I got to say, as far as a matchup standpoint, those could be competitive. So I would kind of angle with those. But no, I'm not going to hate for somebody trying to make more money for their family.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, Simon, I think we don't know whether we're supposed to write about this stuff or not, right? Like, is it real? Is it silly? Should we be doing it? Should we be contributing? I don't know. What do you say? I mean, should we be trying to, prevent these things from happening? Or if a guy can get paid, should they just go get paid?
I mean, can I just hold the facepalm emoji up for my 60 seconds right now? Talking about this sometimes is the kind of thing that makes me queasy. I've admitted on our site that I don't know why the Paul brothers are famous in the first place, but they matter. And that's the bottom line. And they have the attention of certain people on the MMA side of things. So, look, do I think that that these fights should be happening, that professional fighters should be entertaining this idea? Well, you got to think about who it is. Jake Paul's going after Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor he's got nothing. There should be no interest from somebody like a Conor McGregor or an upper echelon person who's established, who would be putting a lot on the line to go into the cage, to the boxing ring, for some type of circus sideshow. But somebody like a Dylan Dennis or Ben Askren, those guys don't make a whole lot of money. Ben Askren is retired. Somebody like that, yeah, I'm not going to hate on one of those guys or somebody like that who's a professional fighter entertaining the idea of fighting a YouTuber.
George, what about you? You got to make it quick, but do you get excited about these, or do you roll your eyes every time you hear about it?
I roll my eyes. I'm appalled that I have to talk about one of the Pauls. But let me tell you something. How many times have one of us said, oh, for $1 million? Yeah, I'll go in there against Mike Tyson and get knocked out. Well, this is the reverse. These guys are the Tysons, the Bispings, the Belforts, all those guys, and they're looking at an easy payday. So the fact that they see it, and it looks like one of them could maybe qualify if they can maybe just rub the guy the wrong way, I don't blame them one bit, even Vitor Belfort. I'd rather see Vitor Belfort against Vanderlei Silva or Rich Franklin. He's talking about fighting other legends. I'd rather see something like that, honestly, from him.
I wouldn't even bust your chops for going long there, man. When you throw out appalled, that's amazing. We got to use that in a headline somewhere along the way. Well done. All right. All right, guys, let's talk about the bantamweight division. It continues to be one of the best weight classes in the sport. The UFC's bantamweight division is fantastic, and there's a bunch of guys in line for Peter Yan. Now, a resurgent Jose Aldo, he recently called out TJ Dillashaw. Then you had Rob Font say, just give me one of those guys. I don't mind. But this week we found out that Cody Garbrandt is saying, listen, if I can't fight for this flyweight title right now because of that rematch between Figueiredo and Moreno, give me Jose Aldo. I'll stay at 135 for the time being. So now we got a new name in there. That's 4 great names that are open for bookings right now. You got Aldo, Dillashaw, Font, and Garbrandt. A great round robin there. 2 fights that you make out of those 4 guys. Tell me how you pair it up. We'll just do 2 minutes for this, and we'll start with you, Simon Samano. Have at it.
The one thing that I can say definitively about the bantamweight division at the moment is that I don't want TJ Dillashaw to come back and get right into a position where he can fight for a title. I realize he's a former champion, but I just feel like that would be set a bad precedent in terms of just coming off of a steroid suspension and then jumping right back in. He should have to fight twice, I think, before he can get to a title shot. So if I'm going to go ahead and go this route, you put the 2 top 5 guys together, put Font against Garbrandt. Those guys are right in line for a title shot with the win there. And then just have the legends go at it. Have Dillashaw and have Aldo go at it. That's a really good fight for Dillashaw to come back to.
Yeah, that's a solid argument. The 2 former champs going at it. George, what about you? How would you book them?
Yeah, same thing. I think he's got to do something with like what Rob Whittaker did. Go out and get 2 nice wins, and now we're talking. But I see Font and Garbrandt as 2 guys that recently came, and they're pushing forward, upward to try and get a title shot. Beautiful KO by Cody Garbrandt. Many will argue that's KO of the year. And then Rob Font taking out a legend, man, and Marlon Moraes, a long-time top 10, top 5 guy. So I'd like to see those 2 pair together, and then let's see Dillashaw, who's going to be proving himself back as a competitor, and then Jose Aldo, who already had a recent shot. Let's match those 2 guys up and see what we can shake out of that tree.
Danny, you agree with these guys, or is there another way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, they're right on the spot, but you can't really go wrong with these type of matchups. I mean, any booking, you can just pull any name out of the hat out of all those 4 names, and you're gonna get a good matchup. I agree with Simon that Dillashaw needs to pay his dues and needs to sort of get at least 2 wins in order to be considered and maybe get a title shot after that. He is coming off a suspension due to EPO, and it does set a bad precedent if he just comes back and gets right back into the mix and gets a title shot. So I think Aldo Dillashaw is the way to go. Obviously, it's still a big bout, still a big name value for the division, and also Cody Garbrandt versus Rob Font, probably two guys with the best hands in the division. So I love that matchup. So I'm all in on that variation.
So many great fights at 135 pounds right now, man. It's going to be a great year in that division. All right, guys, Scott Coker, he recently came out and said, listen, COVID-19 is not going to ruin the retirement fight of MMA legend Fedor Emelianenko. He says he's going to delay things a little bit, and he wants to do 30,000 people in Moscow for the 44-year-old Fedor's final fight. So knowing that's the plan, that they want to do Fedor's final fight in Moscow in front of 30,000 people, let's say Beltor's going to open up the checkbook. They'll pay for whatever they need. If they need to sign a free agent, whatever, they'll get it done. Play matchmaker. Give yourself a little leeway. What's the best choice of opponent to stand on the other side of the cage? We'll do 2 minutes again. And, George, we'll start with you.
Well, I had my fill of Dolph Lundgren this weekend, and I'm not talking about CBS Sports on Saturday. I'm talking about Rocky IV. They kept showing it like this little loop on Paramount. But, man, I really, really got into the movie. You got to have USA versus Russia. Let's bring that back. We've been rivals in many sports. I would like either Matt Mitrione, who Fedor would say, I want to run that one back, or Frank Mir, which is the opposite case. Both Americans, both big-name fighters who the Russian fans would get excited about, especially Mir. He's got that title of former two-time champ. They love Mir out there. He used to broadcast out there. So I don't know. Give me USA versus Russia, and yeah.
Danny, that easy? It's got to be a Cold War reboot?
I'm actually going to go a different route. I'm going to go with a Brazilian. A few years ago, I spoke to the one and only Lyoto Machida, and he said he'd be interested in fighting Fedor. Look, I know he's mostly fought at middleweight, or that's where he's had the most success. But, he obviously did a lot of things at 205, becoming UFC champion at that division. I know heavyweight might seem like a bit of a step, but we know that Fedor's always been considered one of the smaller heavyweights. And I actually think if paired up, they would actually look kind of similar as far as size goes. It's the retirement tour. You got to do fun stuff. You got to put him up against other legends, and you got to have him walk away with honor. I mean, it's such a great career that you don't want to put him against sort of the best of the division. No, get an older name, another guy that could pose some interesting challenges and could make a big fight name-wise. So I'm all in for a Lyoto Machida versus Fedor Emelianenko super fight.
Outside the box, I like it. Simon, he didn't leave you much time. Who you got against Fedor Emelianenko?
Outside the box, here we go. They talked about doing Fedor against Fabricio Verdum. Fabricio Verdum wanted it. Fedor, I think, would be interested in it as well. Scott Coker likes to do cross-promotion. The PFL just recently shown that they are willing to do cross-promotion by letting Kayla Harrison fight with Invicta FC and look for other fights. So, look, work together. Make that fight happen. 2010, he shocked Fedor and stopped him in Strikeforce. Verdum did, and that's the fight that sent Fedor on a downward trajectory. Give him a chance to get that one back. Let's make that happen February.
I dig it, man. If anybody can make co-promotion happen, it's Scott Coker, right? Maybe we didn't lose that fight with the PFL signing. We'll find out. Well, guys, hope everyone's enjoying the holidays. Of course, we've got Ryzen 26 on Thursday, but the next time we all get together, it'll be a new year, and I think we're all ready to put 2020 behind. So enjoy the break and join us again next week on Spinning Back Clique.